I'm looking at it. They're over-ear headphones, it looks like.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's the high-end Anchor noise canceling headphones. Very premium.
How's noise
So much
canceling on them?
wow.
And Anchor noise it's actually pretty good. Artings measured it. It's not like Sony good, but it's better than like N700. Just to say it's decent enough for like trains and shit. Yeah, does a pretty good job, but it doesn't compete with like those CC45. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like the Q35 name is trying to grab some of the Bose.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, but it's a very different design.
No, just the name, just the name.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. The name is probably trying to grab some Amazon clicks, if anything.
Like, get the grandma, like, oh, for Christmas, I gotta get my kid the Q what? Oh, yeah, okay.
It's something Q35, okay.
Yeah. Poor grandmother is always trying to be tricked.
I mean, whatever. It's a fine headphone.
Yeah.
It sounds like ass, but otherwise it's fine.
Grell is actually going to buy one of those Dyson headphones and test it out. He thinks it's going to be okay, and I'm like, I don't know.
Probably is going to be okay.
I mean,
there's a lot of airflow.
Yeah.
Tell me when he tell me when he gets it so I can like message him on ask him about it.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you, like, maybe I'll get to try it. I'm going to be visiting him right before the Munich high-end show.
Oh yeah, he's still living in Germany, right?
Yeah, he's still living in Germany. They haven't like made him leave. Yeah, he's like he lives in like Wedemark, really close to Sennheiser headquarters.
Yeah, I mean Sennheiser is pretty central, I think.
Well, yeah, central north.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be too far from it anywhere, I guess. See, one thing I'm trying to get my head around is Germany like smaller than Pennsylvania as a state in the country? I don't know. Those Mercator maps throw me off.
That's I don't know.
I think it's smaller than Alaska.
Everything is smaller than Alaska.
Alaska's pretty big.
Huge, yeah.
Alaska's big.
There's 83 million people living in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people.
Well.
All right, so yeah, we're already casting, but let's get into it. Welcome to the Sonic Visions podcast, episode 23. We are joined by Juan, Ev Shrug, and Gaz. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing all right.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I wanted to just start it off just going around the room. We don't have a lot of people in here, so I think it's fine to do this. What's new with you guys in the audiophile world? Anything new, anything interesting you guys want to talk about your systems or your experiences?
Sure. Do you guys mind if I go first?
Go ahead.
Please.
Yeah, so I got the green light. I work for consulting for Axel Grell. And I hadn't been doing headphone reviews because conflict of interest and all that with Sennheiser and trying to be respectful. But now that I'm with Grell, he said it's okay to show like the world that I have experience with like tons and tons of headphones. And since we're making in-ears, he gave me the green light to review a headphone. And I'm going to give impressions on the Apos Cascadian. They just reached out to me randomly, and I was like, maybe I can do this. So this new headphone arrived. Not that familiar with it yet, but it's a really warm, like bass-heavy, mid-heavy headphone with very intentional cuts in the upper mids and treble. But that's pretty cool. It's neat to get new gear after so long. And then I have to see if I still have my reviewing chops. And then I would have to finish it quickly though, because we may have a prototype of our next product at Munich High End.
Exciting.
Yes.
Cool.
How are you guys doing?
You want to go, Juan?
Yeah, I'll go next. Man, A Plus Audio Store is actually not super far from me, so maybe
That's
I'll check
cool.
it out later. But I mean, it's in the middle. It's in San Jose, which is like well into car infestation, so it's going to be hard for me to take transit there. But it's possible, so maybe I can check out the new stuff.
Neat.
But anyways, yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'd have to transfer like 2 trains to get from San Francisco. But anyways, okay. For me, in terms of new gear, I guess I've been screwing around with Bluetooth headphones a lot lately. So, with my own money, I bought an AKG N700NC a couple months ago, just before CanJam New York, and then I won this Anchor Q35 thing, and I've been using both of them interchangeably, which is kind of nice. It's pretty good. I don't know. I haven't used much of my audiophile stuff ever since I just got like noise canceling headphones, but I'm always on a train or whatever, so it's a lot easier for me.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about noise canceling and wireless headphones, because it's like you don't have to search. Like, I don't really get tangled on the cables very much, but wireless, you don't have to look for the adapter. You don't have to like get your phone out of your pocket or deal with bulky dongles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like this especially the Anchor one, it has like a 40-ish hour battery life, so it's
Jeez.
like yeah, the AKG one is only 20 hours, so but like yeah, I can use them for days on end. Really so yeah, it's pretty convenient. So not a whole lot new with the audiophile stuff. I tried using my my JVC IMs again and whatnot, but hard for me to get used to in-ears again.
Yeah, it definitely takes a bit of something. Like some people live in that, but if you're used to over-ear headphones, you're wearing earplugs.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I used to always use IMs, pretty big ones too, just because I got used to using them. But like the thing is that my ears are actually quite small, so like not having worn like even my Samsung AKG in-ears, the Galaxy Buds Pro, not having worn those in a while, putting them in again is like actually a lot more comfortable than I remember. So yeah, and then aside from that, I guess if I'm going to bring up something that's happening with my own stuff, because I'm sure you all know I have a little headphone thing going on.
Yeah.
After months of one phone. After way too many months of delays and getting molds, and then finding out that those weren't as good as we wanted them to be, we refined the cups. We took like, and honestly, I think looking back at it, this is probably mostly Sunkar's doing, because he was complaining about the grill and certain screws not being flush. So we fixed that now, and so we have a much more refined mold, and we got a better process for resin printing the master parts. So like the logo and everything have really clearly defined lines, and everything's consistent.
Nice.
And finally, we're getting started with as of a few days ago, suppliers starting with the new molds, with casting based on the resin parts. And hopefully soon we will finally.
It is, yeah. So I didn't know Arebus is like partnering with Odyssey. Arebus, sorry.
We buy headbands from them. That's
okay.
As far as it goes, yeah.
But his quality component got better.
Well, like. Yeah, so we've been like the only thing that we have going on with Odyssey is the headbands. We're using their old headbands before they started using some B suspension, so they still have a lot of those. and so yeah, they're they're nice and high quality, etc.
I mean, that's awesome. It's good to collaborate.
Yeah. It's nice. So like, I know a couple of people have been a little bit confused, like, oh, that is this guy buying knockoff parts, but no, they're original. They're original. Yeah, and then we also have Deconi with the pads. So,
Sick.
they actually, Deconi's been a huge help lately too. We're going to be going to NAMM with them, big music industry trade show. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's like mostly like musicians and professionals, but there is some consumer headphones there too, and definitely people come and have a party. Have you been to a NAMM before?
No, never actually.
I 100% definitely recommend that you take musicians' earplugs with you, because there will be people performing there. Sometimes it gets to like 102, 104 decibels loud, like on average. It could be quite loud. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. Yeah, actually, someone told me it would be loud. I wasn't expecting that. So yeah,
like
definitely.
Next
So
to an
that heads up
ambulance.
there.
Yeah, we had a noise meter. Yeah.
Absolutely. Last concert I went to, the first group that came out, I had my thumbs in my ears for their whole set. Finally, when the main band came out, they knew what they were doing and turned it down some. But the first, it was stupid. I'm guessing they sounded good through my thumbs, but it would have been nice to,
Right. Yeah, musicians' earplugs are a necessity, and at the trade show NAMM, they're not, they don't control, they try, they say like, hey, you're not supposed to have performances, you're not supposed to do this, but people can demo and sample it, so companies sometimes hire people to demo on a schedule and show off how good they are with their instruments.
That's something I didn't expect. Thank you. Okay, and then before I pass this on, I'm also going to the show in Long Beach, so that's gonna be fun too.
I heard that one's cool.
Yeah, it's very chill. I was there last time, but I'm going to be going there with Beach Hi-Fi, so that's gonna be fun.
That's one I've never been to, but I hope you have a good time. Tell us how it goes.
Yeah, last time it was super chill, and now they're going to have a dedicated headphone section, which is something that they didn't have before. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. It's going to be in my hometown in Long Beach. So yeah. Anyways, whoever else is going to make this film, so you want to tell us what's up? Okay, guys.
Yes, where are you going?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, someone was asking me a question. What's new? I rotated my speakers once. I don't know if you guys see that often, but yeah, I just love silk dome tweeters. I don't know. I can't do an AMT. It's not really for me. The dispersion angles, I can't get over it. I don't always want to. It's like a headphone, like a silk dome. You can kind of just move around and the sound kind of follows you, but AMT, not so much. Yeah, it depends on the waveguide, but the ones I have currently, it's yeah. And I don't have my headphone amps. I haven't been doing much headphone amp listening, but I have been doing AirPlay, and I wish AirPlay was better, but it's pretty convenient, so that's what I've been doing.
Oh, do you find AirPlay to be lacking? Is it like convenience or sound quality?
Convenience it's like an 11 out of 10. Sound quality, it's probably an 8 or a 9. A 10 being I cannot discern it from the CD, but it's an 8 or a 9. I think it's just the treble, or maybe it was just a certain day where I was just more aware of some treble qualities, but I like it.
I mean, the highs is the most information and where you'd hear it the most, but I honestly have not done much A/B comparison, so it was interesting to hear that basically Yeah, I haven't like tested AirPlay.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's roughly free, you know, roughly because you need to have a certain kind of product to use it. But it's really convenient. It's seamless. I don't like downloading apps on my phone or my computer or tablet or whatever, but it works for me.
Yeah, it's integrated nicely.
Yeah, it kind of goes to the whole Bluetooth headphone discussion we were having earlier. It's like I want a Bluetooth headphone, but I just can't think of one that I would want that integrates as well as like currently my AirPlay setup.
Right. Well, I mean, the upside is that in general, all the wireless, which I believe is going to be one of our topics later, but all of the wireless receivers and system on a chips and things to process it are receiving some of the fastest advancements. You know, Bluetooth 4.2 and Bluetooth 5.2, they don't really sound different, but the codecs, the encoding that we're using for the different wireless transmissions is getting a lot better. And of course, Apple AirPlay 2 can do ALAC, Apple Lossless Audio Codec, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's cool. Progress is progress. That's neat to see.
Yeah, the best wireless receiver I've tried was the iFi Blue. I think it was pretty sweet, so fast, and pretty good value if you just care about Bluetooth.
Yeah, I'm debating between picking up a Go Blue or a FIO BTR5 or the QDeluxe. I don't know how to pronounce exactly, but the QDeluxe 5K. And I'm leaning towards the 5K because I got this new iPad with USB-C, and I need something that I can use plugged in without lag and with a microphone. And then I want to be able
It's by a company that I don't believe functions anymore, just Sherborne. They made they were bought out, I believe, by Emotiva at one point, but they were for professional installs, and they traditionally, their units are guaranteed for 10 years. And I think it's on year 15. I think the fans finally died, but I have to find the proper fan to replace them with, and then I'll put them in there because these units are not like Infinity fans. I purchased an Infinity and it failed just after a year.
Wow.
The construction wasn't that wonderful, and it just these Sherborne things are built like tanks. You can suck air, blow air, throw it out tubes, exhaust it to outside of the building. Just so many different things you can do with them. You can connect them 12-volt sync or temperature sync, sync it for low or high temp, or you can manually turn them on.
That's interesting.
Oh yeah, I have yet to see. The only thing it doesn't have is a digital display. Really, do we really need a digital display to know what temperature it is? I don't think so. It's nothing but a screen that's going to fail. That's the first thing that failed on the Infinity fan was the screen. So you couldn't tell what you were doing anyway. You know, I'm a real believer in analog. And so you do away with the digital and it's a lot easier to fix. Things last a whole lot longer. Analog gear takes a surge, no big deal. You put something digital on it and it might hurt it. But analog's pretty bulletproof, but
Even like vintage analog gear, huh?
yeah. Yeah, I think, well, why do you think it's called vintage? Because it's still working. Okay.
Right. That's good.
That was great. But,
We'll have to. That's cool. We'll have to explore that topic a little bit more. That'd be cool.
definitely, you know, it may not be the, I don't think they had the testing gear back then that they have now, because some of those units sounded really sweet. Some of them didn't sound worth a dang, you know, just depends on the engineering put into it. But basically it's, you know, analog in, analog out's pretty good. You go start converting it to digital. Convenience is where it comes in. It's digital.
Yep.
But have you tried to buy a car lately? Have you tried to buy a
Yeah.
computer lately? Anything with a circuit board have you tried to purchase?
Yeah, my wife's car blew up last summer.
Yeah, there you go. I have a, what is it, '08 Mazda. I can take it anywhere because the computers in it are so basic and so few. It's silly. And most of them you can bypass if you need be, but it's held up, right? And these new cars, I have a friend has a dealership. He says there's no getting under the hood if you don't have the full diagnostic gear to analyze whatever. I mean, my car's an '08 and it tripped 5 codes just for a thermostat. Can you imagine what today's would do? Today's automobiles? I'd hate to begin to guess how many computer or how many chips are in a modern car.
Yeah, they've had to like halt production.
Yeah, exactly. They can't get vehicles. My buddy that owns the dealership, he's like, we're allotted 2 of these this month and 4 of those this month. He said, and I can sell them all day and make good money all day long. He's actually buying from other dealers that can't turn them over. So he's buying them at thicker and turning around and selling them for a profit. Is that nuts? Just because there's no automobiles?
Yeah, I think there's even some used like 2020 or 2021 models that are selling higher than brand new 2022 models.
Yeah.
Just because of supply.
I believe we're over dependent on, we've become slaves to computers. And, when I was growing up, I could get under the hood of my car and repair almost anything. The owner manuals told you how to set the points. Now it's all done by computer and forget about it. You can't work on them. I'll take, let me fix it myself. And, you put a toolbox in the back of the truck and you're good to go anywhere in the country. Nowadays, you break down, you're done. You're right there waiting for the tow truck.
Well, I don't want to get too deep into it, but
right.
I was gonna say that I've been debating on because gas prices and car availability and everything, and just generally, I don't have to go very far. I've been debating on picking up a power assist electric bicycle.
Yeah.
But I'm just starting to explore that. I mean, I always love riding my bike, but an e-bike just to like go further. We've got a lot of hills here. I don't want to go too far off topic, but yeah, it's a thing. I don't think it's illegal to wear headphones while you ride a bike. It's just dangerous.
Yeah, I was going to say, but you need to love yourself first, right?
Right. Well, maybe transparent hearing and low volume. I don't know.
There you go. But getting back to this fan, I think new 15 years ago they went for like $400. I mean, they're bulletproof. I really believe you can hit them with a 22 and it bounce off. But yeah, they have.
Do you need these fans to cool the drivers, the speakers?
No,
or just the room?
I have my monoblock amps, my solid state monoblock amps, put out they can theoretically produce 1,750 watts at 4 ohms. So they produce a little bit of heat. Actually, they produce a lot of heat if you start driving them. But that's, it's overkill. Yes, I understand. That's a lot of power. I can melt almost any speaker in the world, or the crossovers, or I mean, it's just a lot of power. But It was at the time it was Emotiva's venture into the high end at a really reasonable price for what they saw them for. I mean, the what do you call it? The big chunk of metal in the middle. I can't think of the name.
Heatsink? I don't know.
No, the produces the energy.
The transformer or the choke, or no the power supply.
Yeah, it's Shoot. Anyway, it'll come to me later. Anyway, it probably
Okay.
weighs 35 or 40 pounds by itself. And for most, and now they're going away from, now they're all going digital, power on a chipboard. But, so these are pretty large, and I've never strained them, and they're beautiful. So I purchased them. I splurged when they first came out, and I splurged on them, and I've been, knock wood, happy with them ever since. Look up Emotiva XPR1, and it's a beautiful amp as far as the digital goes. The faceplate is milled aluminum with blue lights that you can set to do almost anything you want. It's pretty neat. Anyway, so I need to replace the fans in the unit because I don't see any burn marks on the 2 processor boards that are in it. So the blue light comes on and one of the fans tries to start, so I'm assuming it's just the fans. Well, we'll find out when I tear it all apart.
At least it's not all mystery of code.
Exactly, yeah, because then I'm lost. Anyway, so that's about as far as that. Now I'm enjoying my system. I picked up a couple of LPs, and I've enjoyed them 2 weeks ago. Hadn't had time this past week, and that's about it. Just not a whole lot going on, outside of work and the boards I'm on. But music-wise, that's the big exciting thing.
Yeah. Well, you just reminded me. I totally forgot that there's a couple LPs I got for Christmas that I haven't felt like I was free to listen to. But this weekend I'll actually have some time, so I'll have to do that. Thank you for the reminder.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I have a few. I just from Christmas as well. Just haven't had time to get to them. The last album I listened to was a new pressing of some old music, Grateful Dead. 67 to 77, best stuff. Some really good music. But I'm older than most of y'all, so y'all.
Yeah,
you're familiar with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but Grateful Dead. The thing is, good music is good music. The genres may change, the popular new stuff may change, but it's just because they're trying not to repeat the old stuff. So I don't know. In my mind, I don't really feel like. I mean, I might get sort of sick of the Beatles, but I think a lot of that is just because I've heard it so many times. And I'll be honest, one of the albums I got for Christmas is Abbey Road. So it's like, that's if I have a record player, that seems to be like a necessary part of the collection.
Oh, yeah.
So there
And
we
a
go.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Yep, I got that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a Flaming Lips Dark Side of the Moon, so that's my one.
Nice.
And for
Yeah,
Grateful Dead, they just released or repressed one of their European tours. I got an email for that on the Grateful
Yeah,
Dead
I saw that.
Sweet news.
Yes, indeed. I still have an unopened. It was a Beatles. They remastered and did the White Album as a box set. I haven't even cut the plastic on and opened that one up yet.
Oh yeah, it's a newest one.
Yeah, what was it? It's going for like $100. And I was walking through the store when it first came out, and I didn't know it was out. I saw it was like $39. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I picked it up, and then I started looking after I got home. I'm like, that's mismarked. They mispriced that by, I was like,
Maybe
well, that's
$100. Geez, if it's a whole collection.
Yeah, well, it's a double speed, and then it also has the behind the scenes while they were cutting the album, so all the vocals and practice session. Now you're gonna make me get up and take a look because I forget the name of it. Here it is. It's the Beatles Escher demos.
All right, guys. Let's. I really appreciate that, but let's get into the topics because we're about half an hour into it and no topics. I don't want to keep everybody, if that's all right. So yeah, let's go for the first topic. So the first question is, What's the importance, in your experience, and what are your experiences with the source of your music? I guess I'm obviously talking about digital here. So putting the DAC aside, whether it's a server or whether maybe it's a digital converter that is going into your DAC. What are your experiences with the source in your systems, and how have they made differences in the sonic quality?
Yeah, no, it does. I feel like make a difference. Sometimes it's a little harder to nail down. If you guys don't, I'm going to be short. But yeah, it does kind of tie in with the vinyl discussion. So digitally, I bought not Ardovana. What was the other one? Amara Lux. And when I first got it, I thought, wow, holy crap, this is totally changing things. It's really making a difference in the sound quality, and it's really changing things. And then I realized it had a default EQ that was making it sound a little bit more rich and euphonic. But when you get down to it, though, like before the DAC, the player software being able to bypass maybe like a poorly optimized generic audio stack from Windows or Microsoft or Apple, that can be a nice, bit perfect improvement. Something a little bit easier to use than ASIO. Also, when you have a good player that has an integrated digital signal processor, where you have good EQ or add other effects like crossfeed or spatial audio, there's definitely a granular difference in those different applications of processing. So it's sometimes just playing the music file. Like if you play on VLC I think sounds like crap. Does anyone else agree with that?
I've never tried VLC.
It was like shocked me. I went back to iTunes because VLC was just doing. It just like sounded like grittier, harsher, like you weren't quite tuned in on the right FM station. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a lot coarser.
Not smooth.
Yeah, it was weird. So yeah, I think so. And then with vinyl, my thought there is, okay, I can afford, maybe a $500 DAC. But even if we have a digitally produced and mastered album, when they put it to vinyl, they're using, an industry grade, super high end DAC, which is going to be way better than whatever I could buy for $500. So that's kind of interesting because if I have a relatively good analog setup, I'm using the studio's DAC. So, and that's the one way to bypass the source. What do you guys think?
I've never looked at it like that because I'm a firm believer in if it's recorded digitally, I'm not going to buy it on an LP. But that makes a good argument, very good argument. Never looked at it like that because you're absolutely right. Even if a $2,000 DAC, you're not going to rival the gear that they're using. At least you hope not, right?
Well, even if you could rival it, it's basically as good as it's going to get. Like,
right.
If they used a certain quality of ADC, and then if they're this is our released version that had to go through either your DAC or their DAC.
Well, there's a lot of merit in that argument. I all of a sudden feel better about some of the albums I have because I know they were recorded digitally. But that's a good argument. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that. I think Peter of Audio Note, he's like a huge proponent of the original Sony discrete, I don't know, to digital converters. He swears they sound way better, because it was like the early days of digital and all. But
it was up like the Philips standard and stuff too, right? Like CD standard or better than Redbook.
Well, it's a little complicated. I don't want to get too distracted, but I think Philips originally wanted to do 14-bit digital, and then Sony was like, no, we should do 16, for that extra dynamic range. But another analog to digital converter that's kind of famous is what is it called? It's the Mike Moffett one. I forget what he worked with. It's some record. They make records, music? No. But there's like two, and the original one was like a Mike Moffat designed analog to digital converter, and then like the whole lore is like, if you get any DAC he designed with his like digital filter, it's supposed to be like the closest you can get to analog from that digital file. Because he constructed both ends of the filter, and it's kind of like the perfect like harmony, supposedly, according to the lore.
And lore.
Yeah, I'm all about audio lore.
Music mythology. Have you experimented with any other digital players or stuff before the DAC in a digital setup?
I have, and I don't like hearing the differences.
Yeah, it's like I just want it to work. I don't want it to be another thing I have to buy and tweak, but sometimes you can't help it. The rabbit hole is endless, isn't it? Do you count?
It's a big rabbit hole.
Right. Now, this may be a technicalities mod, but S-mod. But you said before the DAC, and technically, with Bluetooth, you have the Bluetooth transmitter, receiver, and DSP and filters before the DAC. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and out on a limb and say that those pieces make a huge difference. Like you can have two headphones that both have AAC support, and you're feeding an AAC file from Spotify or Apple Music, and it's not even like high res, but because of the different improvements in the the DAC chip, amp chip, but also the filter technology and the processing speed to I don't know, that part I'm not super familiar with, but you can sometimes just have better quality over Bluetooth because of what comes before the DAC and amp. So even if you connect your Bluetooth receiver to a dedicated discrete DAC amp setup, you could still hear like, oh wow, they've really progressed here.
Yeah, I think Apple AAC sounds so good.
It's like, even though it's compressed, it has a smooth quality to it, doesn't it?
I feel it's like on par or above LDAC.
That's fun. Have you played with LHDC yet?
No, I don't think
it's
so.
It's lesser known.
Last thing I had was like the Shanling M0, and I was like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, I think Shanling supports LHDC. That's it's really strongly promoted by Huawei, and sometimes it's called HWA, but that's another high-res codec that's like LDAC, Sony's, except it's independent of like hardware, and if you download like the FIO Player app, you can have that Bluetooth codec added to your phone. Like even if you have an iPhone, you can suddenly get flat quality, lossless Bluetooth with it. So that's another example of the player making a difference before the DAC. Is like what kind of codecs and encoding you can get before the.
It's actually so more complex than a lot of people give you credit for, but yeah.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. It's like there's so many little things. Like
yeah, I know. I look at it.
It's like easy.
Definitely. The way I look at it is I know enough to know that I don't know everything. I have a lot of ways to go.
Oh, I also wanted to have the Mike Moffat label he worked with was Mobile Fidelity. So there's a master list of all the. Yeah, there's a master list somewhere, but they sound pretty good even without the combo burrito filter.
Making me hungry, man.
I didn't name
it. All right, cool. So, anyone else have topics to do on that, or should we move on to the next podcast topic? All right, I think we had. There was a pretty good amount of contributions there. Oh, yep. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't know. What's the next topic?
Yeah, so the next topic is about kind of related to that, but it's about any sonic differences you guys notice between streaming and playing local files. So let's say you have the same track and you're playing it locally on a server or NAS or whatever it is, and then you streamed it. Have you guys noticed any sonic differences, or what have your experiences been?
Yeah, Gaz was talking about this earlier during the introduction. That's why I was like, oh yeah, we're going to get to that. So Gaz, so you've been experimenting with AirPlay? Now, is it AirPlay 1 or 2?
I can't tell. It's just the Raspberry Pi and it has SharePlay on it and whatever it is. I think it's AirPlay 2, but I can't really.
Is it like Volumo, or which operating system are you using?
It was Volumo, but I was trying to work on some other projects, but it will be Volumo again. Mostly I use Diet Pi just because I can do other things besides a music streamer.
Right. And has it been a satisfying experience for you to do streaming versus local playback?
Satisfying, no. Convenient, yes. To me, physical media is just so much more satisfying. Like, just having to think about what I'm going to play instead of an algorithm feeding me is much more satisfying.
It's like an event too. Like you've got that album art and everything, especially with, like you said, a CD. You got an actual picture instead of. Sometimes it's a little bit low res, or you just can't make that picture big enough. But with even a CD, which is a lot smaller than a vinyl, you can like hold that as close to your eyes as you want and be like, "Yes, I see. My God, you've got an Easter egg in here. Why is that man hanging upside down from a tree?" Or whatever.
Yeah, with the in CDs and physical media is like you can't. It's not the same as vinyl. I mean, it gets close, but the image is like what, an eighth of the size. So it's just not really, a ninth of the size. It's not really the same. But I have some records too. But yeah, being able to enjoy it is what I'm about. Like the artwork, the texture on the art. The photo, being able to read like the liner notes, all of that.
Yeah, I love good liner notes.
I'm sure Nick has some thoughts on liner notes and some artwork.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why they make frames for LPs to hang them on the wall, because it's a beautiful artwork. They're frameable. I mean, a lot of LPs are just beautifully done. Some better than others, but some of them are just incredibly beautiful. I mean, if you get a beautiful copy of something like Dark Side of the Moon, you frame it up and put it on the wall. It's iconic and it's beautiful. I mean, to me at least. And it also reflects nature because it's a prism. So, and there's so many different LPs, even on the inside of a lot of LPs. Years ago, they did it a lot more than they do now. There's all kinds of different goodies, pictures, photos that aren't readily available. Yeah, I mean, all kinds of stickers, you name it. Just all kinds of
looks like colored. I think they're doing colored vinyl a lot. That's coming back in a big way.
Yeah, I love colored vinyl.
Like the marble dyed vinyl, because when you print pictures on it, it's like, okay, a small hit to sound quality, but the colored, it's like you can go to Walmart and get vinyl. It's crazy, but it's also kind of feng shui because you have your Dark Side of the Moon album up, but then this day you decide to put up a different album, and you don't have to put nails in the wall, but you have this foot by foot long, I think it's about a foot, I don't know, pretty decent chunk sized bit of art that you can change up whenever.
Yeah, they make a lot of frames, different kinds of frames that you can either set them on a table, hang them on a wall. They have them where they're acrylic. You can use the little sticky things, put it on the wall, change it out whenever you're changing an album, or change it just for the good looks of the LP. Yep, yeah. That's one of the bonuses with records, but to me, it's more about the analog sound.
Yeah, the music.
Nick, have you ever used like a network attached streamer or a streamer server to listen to music?
Tell them, Smod. Yeah.
You have I guess through the, well, you have the MyTech has a streaming module, but I guess that's not technically a server slash NAS, right?
No, my MyTech is not a streamer. It's just a DAC preamp. I have the SOTM as the streamer.
Oh, right, of course, yes.
Oh, nice.
Right. Yeah, so I'm feeding it through attached hard drives and a 2012 Mac Mini that I never turn off, knock wood, and it's served
Knock
me
aluminum.
well.
Yeah, I have friends in high places that swear by the Mac Mini.
I just got a new one last year. I love them.
Well, the nice thing about the 2012 was it was a basic version, and I gutted it and redid it, added more. You know, those you could change. Nowadays they made them. Yeah, you better be really good with a soldering iron, and even then, the newest ones, you can't even do that.
Right. Although the studio is not small. The studio you can apparently upgrade the RAM, but that's totally off topic.
Oh well,
Yeah.
well let's compare. You know, rockets and bicycles.
Yeah. Right.
The basic job all we need this little computer to do is bring it in and distribute it. Right? All the other stuff you have connected to it, it either cleans it up, purifies it, or there's nothing else on this computer to corrupt anything on it. It has nothing else to do.
That's
So it
one
does
job.
nothing else. Yep, one job and it does it well. Just
Right.
like my streamer, just like my DAC, just like my turntable. Do one job and do it well.
Right.
You know, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best one you can be.
Let's go.
Right?
So, yeah. So Nick, have you heard any differences between streaming or playing like a local file, like either your NAS or a CD?
Yes.
It's really
In a
hard
lot
to
of it-
quantify, but a little bit.
It's funny because my DAC, I can set it to do nothing. I can set it to do MQA. I can adjust EQ. I can do all kinds of things I want to it. But usually I just leave whatever's streaming. MQA, some of the tracks sound better. Some you can't tell the difference. Now, as far as physical media, it depends, and I'm talking LPs, it depends on who pressed it and how well they did the job. Some of the cheaper stuff, it's okay. There's not that much of a difference between a streaming and the LP. Now, if it's something done well, it brings in a body and sense of presence into the room more so than the streaming does, in my opinion, in my room with my gear. But if I have, I'll give you an example. My nephew, he had a favorite song, and he's 35, and it's a Led Zeppelin song. So I said, he says, I want to hear it on your system. I said, okay. So we started, I think how we start, MP3s, then went to CD, then we streamed it, and finally I dropped the needle on it. And when all was said and done, he thanked me for ruining his favorite song.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. About you can never enjoy it the same way.
Yes, now that he's heard it on my system with a decent turntable and setup, it will never sound as good again, unless he comes visits. He lives 1,500 miles away, so.
Well, it's good to have a reason to visit. And I honestly feel like I struggle with that a little bit, like the loss of innocence when it comes to audio. But at the same time, I love when we have Ko on the podcast and his art of the YOLO.
Yes.
And that's kind of changed my look at it, where before it was like, oh, I don't want to know what I can't afford or I can't really hear. But it's like, you know what? At least I've heard it. At least I've had that experience. I've felt that. And sure, maybe something else won't be quite as good. And I've honestly been able to still enjoy things. But if I wanted to hear as best as possible, wow, geez, that's a fun experience. I think it's still worth it.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, for sure. It's like racing, automobiles and motorcycles. It's neat to do, go fast. It's an adrenaline pump. But doing 150 miles an hour on two wheels was an adrenaline rush. I don't know I'll ever match that. It was really scary and fun and exhilarating and scary all at once.
You're lucky you made it out, but I mean, damn, that's intense.
Oh,
I've never gone 200 miles anything, I don't think. Well, maybe in an airplane. I don't know how fast I go.
yeah, well, no, you're the guy in charge, and God forbid somebody steps out in front of you. There's no reaction
Oh
time.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's done. So yeah, it was like I said, it was exhilarating, incredible, and scary, and every emotion you can pound on top of each other all at once, because you knew there's that chance, and you prayed when you were doing, and you really, and it's funny, you realize how fast you're going because 120 and 100, yeah, it's a little different. 120 and 150 is just, it's not, it feels like it's double the speed because you're on them two wheels and all you got protection is a piece of plastic around your head, and that's no protection at all. It was fun. Will I do it again? Nah, not at my age. If I was younger, maybe in a more controlled area. This was on the streets in Philadelphia. Yeah, it was stupid and crazy. It wasn't for a real long time, but we were there for a city block. Getting there was incredible too, so it was pretty neat. But now my brother, he raced cars and bikes. They put titles up in old school. You put your title up, you run what you brung. He had, I don't know, he was working at Boeing Berthold, designing
Wagering your
helicopters.
pink slips?
Yes, pink slips. Yep, title pink slip. But he was 18 years old building cars and motorcycles and working at Boeing Berthold. So he was pounding down some serious dollars with no bills except for his hobby. So he was having fun. Never killed him, never got in an accident. So God bless him. Anyway, yeah. So get back to good albums on good vinyl is really much better than CDs or streaming. In my opinion, it just brings. I've listened to Dave Brubeck, a good recording, and they were in the room. I mean, it was almost, hey Dave, you need a drink. It felt that close and enjoyable, and it was a different feeling than listening to it any other way.
Right. And it is like a super small difference, but there have been times where a friend of mine gave me something like 100 gigabytes of high-res music on my wedding as a wedding gift. And so I keep that on a micro SD card in my my DAP. It's like a Hibby music player.
Right.
And it's like I can't really point down what's different about it from the super high-res lossless master quality Apple music, because I really like their subscription model with the $10 for 24-bit music. That's really cool, and it sounds better than the 16. But something about like the local file, I don't know if it's because I mean, logically, I don't think it should make a difference because there's enough buffering that if there's any missing bits while streaming music, like there's a buffer to take care of that you don't hear anything. But I don't know, something kind of like watching a 1080p video on YouTube versus watching a Blu-ray that has a different compression algorithm. There's just I don't know, like sometimes they could be the exact same file, and then it's really hard to pull a difference. But when it is local and I hear a slight difference. Now, don't get mad at me, Nick, but I think that one of my favorite albums In Rainbows by Radiohead. Sounds much better on digital than it does on my vinyl pressing. My vinyl pressing is sadly, it seems kind of noisy. It seems kind of like it's not. It's like my least favorite vinyl. It's my favorite album. One of my favorite albums.
Well, no reason to get mad. That's when I
I'm mad.
qualified.
I could be mad, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's why I qualified a good pressing versus a average or not so good pressing, and so yeah, because there are definitely big differences in who presses it and where in the line it got pressed. You know, because that master starts to wear out, and they say, "Well, we can get a few more. We can get a few more," and that last one.
more.
Yeah, exactly. That last one is not going to sound as good as the fourth one. I promise you. So yeah, that's makes a world of difference. And so yep, that's a shame, but it happens. Plus, now, did they record analog or digital? Radiohead.
I mean, I think that they started with analog, but I think by the time of In Rainbows, it was digital.
Right.
I don't know for sure though. But I do know that In Rainbows was like super experimental, and that they released it as like a free album. They were like, we're not going to be part of any other label, and they made it so that anyone could download a 128 kilobits MP3, which is not great, but anyone could download it for free, and then they could pay whatever they wanted for the album, if they wanted to pay anything at all. And then later on they released like the full fat high-res versions, but the concept of that album was to try to, I don't know, see as an experiment what would happen if they made it free. And it did cut down on piracy.
Right. Well, that and the fact that when you go into the digital realm,
Hey folks,
and
how's it
mastering,
going? So today we're taking a
you
look
can do
at
a lot of different things to
configuration in
clean
Studio
up,
2 speakers over
change,
here.
produce.
Now before I get started, please do consider subscribing.
You can make a lot of things sound different
and liking the
when
video.
you start
It does help
with
us
all
out,
this,
and also it
the
helps
nifty little
you
knobs
out
and
if you're
sliders
interested
and
in
gears.
these
And
audio
even without a
topics.
lot of effects,
Also,
mastering for digital sounds
to
different
that
than
video
mastering
will
for
be in the
analog.
binding
Right,
post is
exactly.
holding.
It
You
does,
will
and it
see a
depends on
yellow
who's doing
cable,
it, so.
and this cable is
Anyway,
to
I
adjust
don't want
for
to
the
get
bass,
too deep into the
because this
weeds here,
has
but
so much bass
yeah,
and so.
when it comes down to the bottom line, if I'm in my deathbed, give me a nice cigar, a nice single malt, and you better drop a needle. Don't stream it to me.
I'll give you that, Nick. I'll give you that.
All right, brother.
All right, that's fair enough. So the next topic is about vintage gear, and what I want to know is, what are your vintage gear experiences that you'd like to share? And specifically, can you think of a time when you had a piece of vintage gear that performed incredibly well and you were kind of blown away by it, and also a piece of vintage gear that you thought was extremely high value?
And this is kind of like back to when we started saying, like, well, vintage is called vintage because it still works in the intro.
Yeah, not all gear is good, but
But
some
sounds
gear is
good.
definitely good.
Right.
Yeah, most of it sounds pretty good.
And usually you know what's good by now because there's been all this time in the industry to know if something is any good.
Yeah, there's been about 50 years for people to go through it.
Yeah, well, I have only one example of what I consider vintage. People were talking about the Theta DACs, one of the older ladder R2R DACs.
Mike Moffat design.
Right, before they went to shit audio. And they're like, look, this is amazing, like it's so much better than Sigma Delta, blah, blah, blah. Marv Perrin's reputation was kind of built on how excited he was about Theta DACs, and I got swept up in it. I wanted to see what it was about. So my second DAC ever after a shit Bifrost Uber was this really big Theta. And yeah, it's huge. So on the I did.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So on the pros side, it did have like a really natural sound, and there was something I think about the perfect voltage output that helped it to really have a very nice organic solid bass, while also having like non-etched. Like I like the highs from it, and of course, you know, mids are where we're most sensitive, and most systems can do mids well. But there was just something nice about it. It wasn't like exciting. I mean, it was not boring, but it wasn't something that I would typify as, holy crap, I'm on the edge of my seat, this is amazing. It was like rich, 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 and nice. Now, what happened to it though was that I kind of like stopped using it. It only had coax as an input. You know, these days
was it too inconvenient for you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't own a Raspberry Pi before, but I bought a Raspberry Pi and installed Volumo and learned all that, and built it got like a hat on top of the Pi for digital output, so that I could stream coax to this thing. And I also tried using the FIO E10K, because it's a USB DAC, but it has a coax output. And I think I even tried to use the coax out of like a FIO music player. But you're right. Like, it was totally like, okay, I've got this rich sound that's nice, but I can't use it for any of my streaming, and I can't use it for, well, unless I did the Raspberry Pi, which at one point I misplaced and I couldn't find it till this year. And I couldn't use it with video games, which I was using more than music at that time. And it's like, you know, I want to like this thing, but it's this huge thing that takes up all my desk space. So I decided one day to sell it. I got a Cord Mojo, and I actually thought that, okay, well, this has optical and USB and coax, and I have a hard time saying a huge... they were a little bit different. I would say that the Mojo was, for me, lively. There was something very energetic about it. But in general, they were very, very both high-performing things, and I wasn't feeling sad about giving up this, you know, 2.5-foot wide, 1-unit rack size Theta DAC for something that was battery-powered in pocket that I could use with anything, anywhere. And it was like...
all the time.
Yeah, so I couldn't justify holding on to it. You know, I was only making $16 an hour, so I sold it. But in the mail, UPS like broke it, and then yeah, they snapped off. It wasn't like terribly broken, but they like snapped the switches for input selection and power on the front. And the guy was a little bit upset, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I had it really, really overpacked in foam and stuff, but when I went to the store, they said, if for the insurance, we have to rewrap it ourselves to our standards. And I'm like, okay. But their standards weren't as good as mine. And it was actually like 4 months of arguing, because the Theta being a vintage DAC,
Price.
yeah, the price. And like, there was no, I Googled for days and days. I couldn't find the price. So I couldn't say this is how much it was worth. And I said, this is how much I sold it for. And they're like, they didn't want to pay up. And they were like totally at fault, but they managed to find like a way that they weren't going to pay. But I kept bugging them for months, and you know, finding newspaper articles and things. Like, I felt like, whoa, I got this off of microfilm at the library. Not really, but it was almost that bad. And meanwhile, the guy who received the amp was told that he couldn't claim insurance, that he would have to mail it back to me, and then I would have to claim insurance. So they sent it back in the mail, and this time the front panel broke off. And it just kept getting worse. What eventually ended up happening was I did get it back to him, and he was able to find a local electronics guy who knew his stuff. It wasn't too computery. Nick would be proud. they managed to fix it, put new switches on that weren't the original switches, but they worked. And eventually, UPS, like 3 or 4 months later, gave me like twice as much of what the guy bought it for me from, but it was like kind of closer to the original price of the product. And I just like, look, I'm giving you all the money back that you paid me, and I'm giving you the shipping, but I'm gonna keep the extra because I spent hours and days working on this. So I mean, you know, he got the amp and he got his money, so he's not sad.
That's sweet. You got a free jack. You know, it just was a lot of drama. You got your money back.
But as far as the unit working itself, it was flawless to use. It just, you know, every time you mail something is like a prayer.
Yeah, it's risky.
But audio gear does hold its value like amazingly.
Especially if there's lore.
Yes, the lore. I have a Black Silk HD 650.
Don't say that out loud. People are gonna want it.
Actually, I keep trying to tell Grell that his first, if he makes over-ear headphones,
$1 million.
Well, someone said that they should be called Holy Grails, and then instead of HD, it could be HG. So if there's a headphone that comes out and it's called the HG 1200, then that means it's twice as good as the HD 650.
That's good.
And
What do you guys
what was the address they were sending that back to you?
It was, so I'm on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and they were in California on the West Coast. It was going back and forth, doing a country national tour.
Oh my God.
The manager of the UPS store got to know my name very well. And hid once.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. What about you guys? Do you have any vintage gear stories? Is it worth it for, you know, would you advise someone who was in the audience that, yes, go for vintage?
Not if you don't like drama, heartache, and huge victories.
Right.
If you
high
just
risk, high
reward. Yeah, if you just want to buy something and it work, in quotation marks, most of the time, then just buy new.
But if you want a hobby,
yeah, if you want a hobby, like part of the hobby is finding a piece of gear. Like that's part of the hobby. It's like, yes, they don't make these anymore, and I got one.
Yeah, I purchased I think the first line of Avantage, it was the 1000 series. And matter of fact, I still have it. It had ProLogic. It was the first year. It was ProLogic Stereophile. It was the cover in Audio Gear of the Year that year. And of course, it was 5.1 channel. That's when it was all new and home theater. And it was a really fine unit. Built-in amps. You could use external amps with it. That was all new technology at the time. And it took a lightning strike. And the only thing it blew out was the FM stereo. Everything else worked. I mean, it blew that out, and the lightning took out every other cable box in the house. Literally melted the wire going into the back of the cable box. But the only thing it did to this Yamaha receiver was take out the FM receiver itself.
Yeah, sometimes I get a feeling about these vintage gears. Sometimes I feel like they're so overbuilt that when our civilization is gone and we're in a post-nuclear apocalypse, that there will still be audio gear working somewhere.
Oh, most definitely. This thing weighed about, I don't know, it wasn't that powerful. I think 150 watts a channel, and it probably just 2-channel driven at that rating, and it was 75 pounds, I think. It was stupid heavy. My older brother's a pretty powerful guy, and he went to pick it up and said, "Oh, wait a second." He said, "That thing didn't look that heavy." He let me get a better grab. He thought he was just going to snatch it up like a bag of groceries and walk off with it. No, it's not a CD player. So, but yeah, it's I haven't used it in quite some time. You know, I've upgraded everything, but for some
Yeah.
reason I still have it. I mean, I guess I don't know. I could use, you know, the old saying, you could use it, but you never get around to using it. As soon as you get rid of it,
That's when you need it.
oh, I've done that with so many pieces of gears that haven't.
Yeah.
How many here? How many here have done so?
Yeah, hand up. Yeah.
That's when I know I like something when I miss it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Definitely.
miss me when you're gone.
I don't miss
Yep.
every piece of gear, but the ones I do, whoa.
Yeah. Ah.
You see people buying the same piece of gear like 3 times.
I'm guilty. Done it.
You've got to type.
Yep. Monoblock amp. I love my monoblock amps. I bought them and sold them 3 times.
Same
Loved
brand
them.
and model?
That was the XPR 1L. That was 35 watts of Class A solid state. They sounded so nice. And then I decided I was going to upgrade. And then I bought them back, bought another set. Then I said, no, I'm going to get better. And I sold them to finance, and no, they weren't. So did that 3 times, so I finally got the XPR ones. Then I said, okay, I don't miss them anymore.
Did you like go to like one of the feet on the bottom of the unit and you put a little ring around it? We'll be together forever.
No, that's the XPR ones. Obviously, the 1Ls I've sold 3 times, so
Right.
of course I bought them 3 times as well.
Yeah.
And I think the last time I bought them was the most expensive set too. Crazy love affair.
I don't have any vintage gear experiences, but I might get into it because I've been looking for a preamp that is a lot warmer and richer and kind of euphonic sounding because
Even more than your tube preamp?
Sorry?
Even more than your tube preamp?
Yeah, because the Arc I find is a fairly neutral sounding preamp for a tube preamp, and so yeah, I'm looking for something because I've kind of come across the Bottlehead Crack, and I was on Gaz's podcast talking about that, the Good Sound Club podcast. So shout out to Gaz's podcast, but yeah, so I've been looking into kind of vintage Conrad Johnson maybe as potentially something that might bring me the sound that I'm looking for.
Have you rolled your tubes?
Yeah, I put a tongue sole. I think it's 6550 in the power supply unit, and that did help a little. That smoothed and warmed things up a bit. But I think that from my understanding and my reading, I mean, you can only make arc sound euphonic to a certain degree, especially the more later arcs, not the really old ones. And so, you know, I don't know how far that will get me and what I want. I did get a new set of bookshelves, these Vienna Acoustics ones, to warm up the sound, and that is helping for sure. That's a much more smoother, fluid kind of sound compared to the ATCs. So I'm enjoying that. But yeah, so hopefully I'll be kind of getting some experience with vintage gear, and we'll if I get some more experience, I'll report it in future episodes.
Well, I could be wrong, but I kind of get like the feeling that in general, like speaker technology, both in headphones and in speakers, the drivers, we've kind of gotten really, really advanced and really mature in that technology. And then we've also gotten pretty mature with amplifiers as well. Like a lot of people say that for tubes, the 70s and the early 80s are like some of the best tubes of all time. And just, you know, they just make the most excellent tubes. And it's like solid state is a more convenient, not exactly analog to MP3 versus masters or CDs, but in general, like you've got different designs, but not necessarily better designs. We kind of know how to make really good amplifiers, and we've known for a long time. So as vintage gear goes, I think it's pretty good to shop for like amplifiers and headphones and speakers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to more computery stuff with software and transistors, like a DAC or a processor or a player, I feel like that is still got more room to mature. It has still more room to grow. So I don't know. I think that for vintage shopping, it's a little bit dicey to go like I did and get a DAC. It was good, but I think I eventually found out that DAC was originally like $1,500. And I was like feeling like it was kind of matched by a Mojo at like $500. Not exactly the same sound, but it was like hard to say that all these years later that almost a fifth of the price, a third of the price was almost competitive. I feel like vintage, you don't really necessarily want to do DACs unless there's a specific sound signature you want. Do you guys agree with that? Am I wrong?
I like the sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Smod. Did you try Mallards in that preamp?
I don't know. It uses 6H30s, so I don't know if you can run Mullards in here. In the ARC. The thing with the ARC is also it's not that amenable to rolling because of the use of the 6H30s. And actually, from my reading of the history of ARC, that was actually a complaint of a lot of people that wanted a more euphonic, rich sound. Is they switched? I think it was at the reference 3 or around that point. They switched from what I think it was 6SN7 before. They switched to 6H30, and a lot of people felt that was actually, in terms of the musicality, that was a downgrade. And because of that, now it's much more of a, a lot of people are chasing the neutrality with a touch of the tube naturalism. I like to say, and so for that, the ARC is perfect. One of my friends works at Acora Speakers, the granite speaker builders, and he used to work at American Sound, which is like one of the biggest distributors in Canada. And so he's heard a lot of stuff. He's heard ARC and VAC and so much stuff. And from what he said, the VAC is more of a warmer, euphonic kind of 3D sound than the ARC, which is faster and has better bass or crisper bass and that kind of thing. So I was debating between the Ref 5 SE, which I have, and the Renaissance Mark 5, the VAC. And I probably, now that I know kind of what my preferences are after hearing the Bottlehead Crack OG, no speedball, I probably should have went for the VAC, the Renaissance, I'm guessing. But from my, and I've done, again, a lot of research, talked to so many audiophiles, I'm like messaging everybody every day. They actually recommend even going, older, like more vintage and Conrad Johnson or vintage VAC or that kind of thing for a more bloomy kind of romantic sound, this is the sound that I love. When I heard the crack sound, it's just incredible.
Well, there's a lot that makes up what the tube sound is. But I kind of wonder, is there like a good app to through processing add second order harmonics? I don't know, that might be interesting to play with. I'm a bit of a soundstageaholic, so I love the idea of like a tubey resonance that kind of creates false soundstage.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know, keep us informed. I'm glad you enjoyed your speedball crack. I think a lot of people were following your progress on that.
I actually got so I built the OG crack, but I also bought a speedball crack somebody else built, and I compared them, and I have them both here. And I much prefer the OG. I don't actually like what the speedball does, and the speedball makes it sound more like flatter and more kind of pushed out the soundstage and more quote unquote solid state, and so. So this OTL kind of magic is mid forward. What I said in the chat before is It feels like the singer is stepping forward out of the music and singing to you personally. That's how I felt when I listened to Crack OG. And a lot of people who talk about the Crack, they all talk about the Speedball. A lot of people haven't actually heard the OG. They all say, "Oh yeah, I heard the Crack. Yeah, I heard the Crack," and it's always Speedball with Speedball with Speedball. So if a lot of people actually go back, and it's also, of course, the pairing, right? I'm using the Black Silk 650s.
I mean, it's also hyped as like the upgrade. So it's kind of like people who say, "Oh, well, this is not Harman Curve." If people get it in their mind that the Speedball is de facto an upgrade rather than another flavor, I mean, I don't know what it does. Maybe it helps regulate the power or whatever, but I don't know. Sometimes experimentation is good. Keep going though.
I got a Bottlehead Moreplay coming in, which is apparently a warm, preamp. It's pretty inexpensive, so I'm gonna build that as my next kit, and I'll try that out and compare that to the Arc. And and I'm still researching. I'm still looking around. The new bookshelves I got though are helping a lot. So even with the new bookshelves and the Arc, it's sounding quite good and more kind of to a warmer character. What I'm looking for. But I'm gonna keep exploring. Yeah, as you guys know, like synergy and that kind of thing is very important.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I will tell you what. I was very tempted when I saw Josh Moe putting up for sale his Cavalli Gold with monoprice. So I guess it's a monoprice gold.
Yep.
Liquid gold, but oh man, like it's frustrating because I wanted it. Oh no, it's platinum. I wanted it, but I was kind of waiting for a paycheck, and it didn't match up with the timing before it got sold. But you keep talking about like your tube preamp and now your Speedball, or your Crack, and you're making me want to play with tubes a little bit more. I've got some in the basement, but I haven't listened to it for years.
Yeah, tubes are, Nick and so many other people pushed me to tubes, and once I got into it, it was amazing. Another name that keeps coming up is Shindo. Shindo is regarded as something that's very musical, but at the same time very detailed, and it has that kind of holy grail kind of sound. So that's another thing that the only problem with Shindo is it's quite expensive. But
it's so expensive.
Yeah, but
wasn't one of the Aerophile guys really big on Shindo gear?
Yeah, he uses, I think, a Monbrinson, I don't know. But
I don't know if I thought it was the guy who passed away, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's Art Dudley.
Yeah, it was Art, and he had the Shindo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he gave it some of it to Ken Michaeliff.
Okay, that's cool.
So there's a review on the Bottlehead forum about that Moreplay preamp, and basically that guy has the Shindo Bryson, or I don't know how to say it, but he basically said that he was shocked by the performance, and he felt that they're kind of a similar sound and kind of in the same league, or he says that they're like two brothers or cut from the same cloth. So that's pretty exciting because the Moreplay is only like what, $440. So we'll see. I'm gonna test it out, put it against the Arc, and see how that turns out. And then I mean, I'd like to try a tube amp, a power amp, but the problem is that my speakers are all quite low sensitivity. My bookshelves are low sensitivity. My floor, I have bigger bookshelves for my midfield listening, and it's all low sensitivity. So, and I don't have space for horn stuff and all that kind of stuff. So, but eventually, maybe one day.
You wish you had Nick's stuff, huh?
Hey, I'm going to tell you something about watts that I'm sure you guys got to know. That tube watts are not comparable to solid states. At times I have my monoblock tube amps are 75 watts fully loaded with excuse me, K120 tubes. Takes 4 of them. That's 75 watts per speaker. They can produce this. I'm guessing the same decibels as my 1,000-watt monoblock solid state amps. So when you're talking, 50 watts of tube, that's a whole lot more than 50 watts of solid state.
Right.
The ability to drive a speaker is completely different between a tube and a solid state. So
That's a good point.
My speakers are 89 dB sensitivity, which means that you got to have some power behind them to get them to sing. And I rarely have to turn my speakers up, turn my volume up very much, either with my solid state or my tubes. And 75 watts doesn't sound like a whole lot of watts, does it? But when it's a 2 watt, I would guess 200 watts of solid state is what it sounds like.
I mean, 75 watts is a lot for a headphone, but speakers. What did you say the sensitivity was on those speakers?
89.
Oh, whew. Yeah, that's
so you need some power to drive.
Yeah, that's almost as well. I don't know if "bad's" the right word, but that's almost as insensitive as the infamous Fostex T50 RP. I don't know if that's maybe not the least sensitive headphone in the world, but it is the least sensitive headphone in my collection.
My SCM7s are rated at I think 84, and then apparently when in real testing they go down to 81. So it's it's tough. I connected this 10-watt Elikit tube amp to them, and it sounded decent. And I only had to turn it up like halfway, and it was quite loud. But I could but then when I put the ARC and pass into the ATCs, then they come alive. You can tell there's a big difference. But to be fair, I mean the Elikits are only 10 watts, right? It's a 10-watt SET, so yeah.
Right. Oh, the word I was looking for earlier was toroidal transformer.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was gonna say toroid. I thought I was gonna say toroid.
Yeah,
I did say transformer.
Yep, it's a 2.5 kVA toroidal power transformer with 240,000 UF of total storage capacitance. So that's a whole lot of oomph.
That's about 30, 40 years into my future of saving up.
I don't know if they're going to be making them then. It's all going to be digital.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, I'm sure it's out of my financial reach. But hey, maybe I'll visit someday. I don't know.
Hey, always invited.
I mean, if you share a hobby, it's a good time.
Yeah. I'm trying to look up real quick. See what year my preamp was made. Because it's not a new one. It's a Macintosh C220 preamp. And
220?
Yep, C220.
Or 22?
Nope, a C-220. Looks like 2008. Well, no, this article was published 2008. That was a $4,000 tube preamp, I guess. There it is.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, that's nice. That's one of the least expensive preamps they made. But I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed it very much. Takes 4 12AX7As tubes. But
excuse me, but right around the time you said the price, I was overtaken by a sneezing fit.
Oh, it retailed new for yeah, it's not cheap, and it's retained its
4,000
value pretty much. Yeah, 4,000. It's retained its value pretty well. I've looked every now and then. I'll look at eBay or this or that, and look at the different places, and it's still $3,000. So, but I'm not looking to part with it, so I'm not really too worried about its value. I just don't want my wife to sell it for what I told her I paid.
That's how you know you're a real audiophile.
Right?
So the last topic, and I think this will be a short one probably, is about GR research. And if you guys don't really know about GR research, then we could probably just forget about this. But he's Danny, I think Ritchie, is a guy who does speaker upgrades, and he has a company that does speaker upgrades. He does videos on speakers, and I just came across him recently. I didn't know much about him, but he's pretty interesting in the sense that he kind of takes speakers apart. He shows you the insides. He shows you the crossovers, and then he measures them and kind of talks about how they usually it's mostly measured performance that he talks about. Do you guys have any have you come across GR Research? Any thoughts on his work?
I don't think he's found a crossover from the factory that he hasn't pummeled into the dirt. Maybe one or two.
I think the ATCs he liked.
He's found a lot. He's found a lot of expensive speakers with, excuse the expression. Well, I won't use it. Really, not so high performance parts.
Yeah.
You know, high dollar gear and supposedly crossover with cheap $5 parts.
Was he the guy?
That's a lot of audio.
That's a lot of audio. Was he the guy that he published like a build directions for a do-it-yourself speaker when he like put active crossovers in it or something?
I don't know. I don't know if that was him, but he does he does a lot of DIY stuff. He sells DIY speaker kits, and he's has videos where he shows him assembling the crossover and assembling the speaker and all that kind of stuff. One review comes to mind, Nick, that he did was of the Dyne Audio Special 40, and it's a fairly expensive speaker. I think it's like $4,000, at least $3,000 if not $4,000, and apparently uses like really bad parts, and the cabinet, like the material inside the cabinet's not very good, and measured performance is not very good. So he does upgrades. He does cap upgrades, resistor upgrades. He's a believer of this thing called this tube connectors. I don't even know much about them. And he uses this no-res lining in his all the cabinets. So he sells the upgrade kits to...
Everything's better with tubes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some of the gear, I've seen stuff that was 3 times that price in speakers, and there was nothing on the inside. I mean, no deadening, no material.
Right.
And some parts just they were using connectors on the back of the speaker that were like 30-cent connectors. And it's like they were just copper coated. They weren't even solid. It's like, what? You know, it's $12,000 speaker, and they're using garbage.
Yeah.
And not all of them, but there's some. A lot of what our gear is made out of crap.
Well, maybe they were a believer that those specific components didn't make a audible difference. It didn't measure like it's like, hey, this cable's the same as the other cable, so the connector is going to be the same too, right? It's all electrons.
As long as it's cheaper to make, you can sell it for the same amount. It's a good deal for them.
Right, more margin.
Hey, Bose put all their money into advertising, and they sold $1 billion worth of it. Right?
Well, I mean, yeah, they did. I would say though that they also did spend a lot on research, and they did some amazing things to get like as much as possible out of like paper speaker cones.
Yes, they sold a lot of junk, but then they sold some gear that was just amazing. It did make a lot of sense, but they put a huge amount into sales, and it's a shame. A lot of people just. But like you said, they do have a few pieces that were very good.
Well, and then they could reputation coast after they figured out this science. Then they could, I don't know if they kept the scientists on. I hope they did, but. Yeah.
We're joined by Zach and Bruno. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good.
Hey, Zach. We don't talk about Bruno.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, good.
I'm kidding.
I've been fighting with Discord for about an hour this morning. I just don't know It was just having one of those moments where everything was crashing. I installed the test, like the beta version. I was like, it wouldn't let me log on the browser. It was like just not loving me, and then it randomly fixed itself. So I don't know.
I was gonna say,
Same
Zach,
thing.
can't you take a hint, man?
Yeah, I know, man. I'm relentless, so I was like, nah, the boys are talking. I'll have to pop in and see what's going
Good
on.
for you.
Your Discord is
Yep.
becoming a teenager.
Oh, I know it's a pain in the ass, but I'm still catching up with the conversation here. So yeah, I'll just I'll listen in and see if I have anything to add in a bit.
Well, we were kind of on the last topic. Can you remind us, Smod, what was his name again with GR? Research?
His name is Danny Ritchie. But yeah, if you guys don't mind, why don't we just let Bruno and Zach maybe just chime in a bit, just since they just came in, just for a little while, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
If you guys have to run, that's fair enough. Yeah, like I know Bruno kind of mentioned the vintage topic. He was interested in that. So, what are your experiences with vintage gear? Can you give us an example, Bruno, of a really high performing vintage piece you came across, and also a high value vintage piece?
I'm just gonna listen and eat some cheesecake.
For the last about 5-6 years, I've been working on vintage gear. I mainly fixed a lot of it for clients, and recently at work we got in quite a nice Luxman 505X. Now, it was like a 70s solid state amp, so it wasn't overly exciting in that regard, but at the same time it sounded surprisingly warm and quite lush, so it was a really nice surprise, because I'd never really heard much solid state Luxman gear. I think they're overvalued, but it was like a really nicely made unit and sounded just so enjoyable to listen to. It really reminded me of some of the older leak gear I've played around with, so stuff like that. My father, he's just currently working on his Garrard 301 oil bearing, building a plinth for it. So that will be interesting to see how that comes along. I mean, it depends what time period you're talking about, because I've seen in person before and heard a Tannoy Black. Now, a Tannoy Black was essentially the first speaker that Tannoy ever made. They were made in 12 and 15-inch variants, and I'll try and find a picture for you.
Yes, please.
But essentially, these were like before the Tannoy Dual Concentric. They're worth anything from $8,000 to $20,000. And here in New Zealand, there were quite a few imported over here, and I know someone who has 2 of them, and he didn't believe that they were worth over 10 grand when I told him, and then we looked it up, and he's like, holy shit. And then it got sent over to Scotland. So I mean, some of the vintage gear that I've really liked personally is kind of unassuming gear. So in New Zealand, there used to be something called like import tax. Essentially, in the 1970s, there were really big restrictions on importing gear made in the States and the UK. So what would happen is that like companies like Cambridge Audio and Name would send over circuit boards and cases, and they'd be assembled in New Zealand.
Oh yeah, getting around the tariffs because it's built in New Zealand.
Yeah, which is really, really interesting. So we got a number of, because we're a Commonwealth country, we got a number of really interesting gear after the war. I mean, a lot of all our broadcasting gear was Japanese, and they used some of the highest end Tamura transformers, right? I'm still yet to try and find an old mixing disc, which is Valve. I'd love to buy one. But going on to the question, some of the locally made Valve gear is really quite nice. Like low wattage stuff, 8 watts, ECL82, or 6BM8 for the Americans. Yeah, 6BM8 is the ECL82. So, pretty unassuming amps. Because we mainly get British gear. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm raptured. Yes.
Because we mainly get a lot of British gear, you never really see stuff like old Fisher units. In fact, stuff like PS Audio, that was even built under license in New Zealand.
Mm.
Have you guys heard of a brand called Puro?
Nope.
That's interesting. So Puro, they make these really beautiful looking amps now, but they made these big PA amps essentially for like halls and stuff. And they use MOSFETs. So in some regards, they're very similar to say pass lamps. And these
Okay.
are built in a wee country town down here in New Zealand. I don't know why it says Australia. It's not Australian.
Mhm.
That's actually from an Australian website. That makes sense. But anyway, these are built. And they were built for around 40 years. This brand is still around to this day, and they're known throughout the world. And their main market was actually exporting amplifiers. Their preamplifiers are absolutely loved. I'll find a picture of one. SM2 and the SM3 preamps, they're very good. And these were built in the 1980s in some wee country town. Oh, here's a picture. And yeah.
Puro sounds French, but maybe it was, I don't know. Cool. Thank
now
you for
another
sharing these
brand-
pictures.
Yeah. Have you guys heard of Plinius?
Phineas?
Yes. Yeah. Plinius, yes.
Yeah.
Plinius.
They're built 15 minutes away from my house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Plinius, they've been around sort of the same kind of time period. And the funny thing is, the only reason why these companies are still around is because they're importing gear. The thing is that no one in New Zealand, there's very few people who are going to spend $10,000-$20,000 on hi-fi gear. So, because it's such a high-end market, almost all of it's exported. And I've heard very few Plinius gear, but it is something I'd like to see more of. I mean, the vintage Plinius gear is actually beautifully made. It's dual mono, and sometimes they can be had for under $1,000. They're very well priced. The only thing with them is they need to be serviced, or else they are known to put like DC voltage on the speaker outputs and then result blow your speakers up. But I mean, in the New Zealand market, you can get something like this. This is the Plinius 111. It's a dual mono power ramp, and it's exquisite. They sound absolutely great, and they're available for not too much money. Another.
This is so much better than my vintage story.
I mean, the thing with vintage gear is that as much as I like old gear, I'm not, how would you say it? I'm not saying, oh, you must get vintage. Well,
But
the
you
old
found good
radios,
stuff.
it really depends what you're into, I think.
It's also
I
local.
mean-
That matters a lot, no?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the market in New Zealand is very different to it is in the States or is in the UK or Europe. So it's really funny when someone says, "Oh, you should buy this vintage amp." That's great, but no one knows where they live. So in America, Adcom gear is like it seems to be really well liked on like a budget. They're like the only quote unquote decent power amps you can get for under $150. It seems. But you guys have got a lot more of a selection, which is a thing I find where I'm like, wow, you guys get all these other brands that we never got imported here.
We are consumer crazy.
I think for vintage gear, I think Canada's even better than the U.S.
Oh, interesting. What is that? Just how do you base that on?
On cam.
Like it's like a used market or something?
Yeah, Canuck Audio Mart. It's crazy.
Which was actually, I saw that watermark on the corner of one of Bruno's pictures.
Yeah, the vintage market in Australia is pretty tiny. I mean, it does exist, and there's still some pretty cool bits of kit that people have bought, but like you don't get the bargains, that you can find in parts of the States where you go to a garage sale and someone, selling something that could be massively undervalued. But then saying that, I started my audio journey in vintage. I was visiting basically a gypsy up in like some rural area who was into audio. He was like, he built microphones, and he's like, come have a listen to my stuff. And he like built these feather microphones by hand. And I was like telling him I was trying to get into audio and stuff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got an old amp there in the corner. It's not working." And it was it's funny that Bruno brought up the L505X, because this guy had a Luxman L80, right? So beautiful wood veneer, big heavy knobs, like beautiful old solid state from I think the 80s or maybe late 70s. I said, "How much do you want for it?" He's like, it's not working. You can have it for $20. And I was like, "Okay." So I then go and like teach myself how to check capacitors, because I know that this thing's probably fried. I replace some of them. I realized very quickly that I'm a bit, unqualified for the job. I managed to get it working, but it doesn't sound quite right. So I find a local engineer who says for $100 he can replace the caps and give it a service and a once over. And he's like an old broadcasting engineer, and so he does this job for me. And the next thing I'm like I've got this amazing piece of kit that sounds pretty good. And like Bruno, I'd say for solid state, Luxman at the time was pretty warm, pretty lush sounding. It was pretty thick as well. But it had, the feature list that came with this thing was ridiculous. It had like phono, headphone, it had like, speaker taps out the wazoo, it ran about 30 watts or so. It had, the preamp function. So for me, I could kind of I could run my DAC into it, I could run my turntable into it, this thing could basically do everything. So that was one of my starting points for audio, was like this $20 amp. Yeah, I had to spend 100 Australian dollars having it fixed up, but I sold that amp a couple of years ago for $500, just because the vintage market for the old Luxman, especially if the veneer's in good condition, because they're beautiful looking amps. They've got this nice wood grain and the knobs on them are you just want to fiddle with those knobs. There's
I get wood for wood.
Bruno's a knob man. He knows. So I don't know. So from there, I was like, well, what else is good value in vintage? And I was messing around with digital at the time, because everyone was saying I've got this cool amp, and I had some objective amps, so I was like, oh, well, my amps don't matter because I have a new Guy O2 amp, which means I never need another amp again for my headphones. So I thought I better look at the DACs. So I started looking at vintage, because I knew that everything that was built vintage, because I was looking at tube and R2R and buying that sort of stuff in modern units, like good tube or good R2R DACs, was silly money for me at the time, impossible amounts of money to spend. And then I saw that a lot of people were talking about Sonic Frontiers, which was a company that produced some pretty good stuff, all tube-based DACs, preamps, and amps out of Canada in mainly the 1990s. I want to say is probably when they were most prolific. And the guy who designed it sort of had really good foundation in his design. He'd worked with theatre and a few other big names, and it seemed pretty solid. So I found a unit for I think about $700, and then I sent it to PCX in Canada to have it fully serviced. I think that cost me more than it cost me to buy the unit, and then the shipping and stuff. And
that's insane shipping.
Yeah. Well, welcome to living in Australia and New Zealand, man. What we pay in shipping, what we pay in shipping for international stuff, is often more than what people would spend in a year on audio, just moving stuff around. It's crazy.
It's insane.
You're right. You go.
With shipping and stuff, it's really funny. I browse Hi-Fi Shark, and I've been looking at Japanese auctions a hell of a lot. And as you say with the old Luxman gear, it sounds really warm and lush. But the thing is, it might be cheap in Japan or wherever, but then you've got to get a step-down converter, because we run 240 volts. So all the gear that you guys get, it's normally not voltage selectable.
Right.
It's quite funny. The Luxman gear and the Sensui stuff, a lot of it has an internal voltage switch, but at the back of the unit, sometimes it will only say 1 voltage. That can be really confusing.
But it does
there's a switch, but yeah.
Or a
there's
jumper,
a switch that's not labeled. Well, I have to interject a little bit, Zach, because earlier when we were talking about antique gear, we were talking about there's something here. I'm sorry. I was listening so much and I waited for a pause, and now it's hard to remember what I was going to say. But it was in general, we were saying that the point I wanted to get to was, do you think that with your access to vintage gear, that it may have encouraged you to become a little bit more of a tinkerer, become a little bit more of a do-it-yourself person? Because I said, hey, if you shopping for vintage gear, it's like you're buying a product and a hobby. But for you, it's become a bit more of a hobby. Do you think, or did you already have kind of tinkerer inclinations before that?
I had a little bit of an inclination because it was like a way to make money, at the time. Like when you're poor, you're like, oh, I can buy this thing off, Gumtree, which is like our equivalent of Craigslist, and you can spend $100, fix it up, and then sell it on StereoNet for a few extra hundred. So I did get interested in the tinkering side of thing, but then I realized as well that it was like, I'm just not that technically minded. Like, yeah, I could identify a broken cap or something wrong on a circuit and replace it, but I didn't really find much joy out of it. Like some people have this like addiction to fixing stuff, or like they get a huge rise out of it. But for me, it was very laborious, very tedious. It was not something I would just do for fun. It was something that I had to do for either money or to try and get to an end.
This might confuse you, but I got into audio from hobby electronics. So since I was very young, I've always been interested in making things. And how I got into hi-fi, Valve Hi-Fi, was my dad was building amplifiers at the time, and he brought home an old stereo radiogram. So it was essentially a stereo amplifier. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we made like a stereo amp together? Now, he was just getting into building valve amps, and we eventually found out that the output transformers were stuffed. But all that really sparked off my interest into audio gear. One thing, in New Zealand, we've got Trade Me. So if you guys have got eBay and Craigslist, we've got Trade Me, which is what everyone uses to buy and sell stuff apart from Facebook. And sometimes there can be great deals on there, but it really varies. One day, a bit of gear will be posted for $150. Either a dealer could buy that bit of gear, or an individual will. But it's a very common play for dealers to be buying up stuff, then selling it the next week on Trade Me for 2, 3, 4 times the price.
Scalping and reselling, yeah. I mean, it's not uncommon here too. But as far as seeking out vintage gear, I don't know. I don't know. There's all kinds of people in all parts of the world. But if you have to have the reason why I was wondering did one environment cause the reaction is because if the tariffs are so high, the import tax is so high, and if a lot of companies are saying, okay, well, we're going to start a location in New Zealand, in Australia, where we're going to send the parts, so it's not an actual product, and we don't have the tariff, and then we assemble it on site, that then educates some of the populace to be better tinkerers, assemblers, and makers. Maybe not necessarily engineers, but it does, I don't know. I feel like that does kind of lead to creating an environment of people who are really good at fixing things.
I don't know if it still happens though, right, Bruno? It did used to happen, but then our wages are so ludicrously high that almost nothing is produced in Australia and New Zealand. Like, very few products are made here now because the labor costs are so excessive that we produce nothing. We produce no cars in Australia. As far as I know, no cars are produced in New Zealand. We produce almost nothing in the nations. We're completely,
The thing with local manufacturing is it's only done for bespoke products. So that's why Perro and Plinius can survive. They're selling $8,000 amplifiers. I think Plinius's cheapest bit of kit is $2,000, right? So because it's such a high-end market and all of it's being exported, they can't afford to make it. But with local manufacturing now, it's essentially non-existent. Technicians and such, now I work for quite a large repair company. We deal with Zephyrnovus, we deal with JB Hi-Fi, Noel Lemming, Harvey Norman. We deal with all their warranty returns and all the importers in New Zealand and Australia. So we've got contacts with Panasonic and Denon, Marantz, Class A agents. So we service all that gear. And the funny thing is, it fails so quickly. Just last week, I worked on a 3-month-old Denon amp. that was $1,500, 3 months old, from factory. You know what the problem was with it?
What?
There was a loose connector in a socket. One of the crimps was poorly done.
Huh.
And you
So it's
could
just like
lose
a
the
bad solder?
No. So a crimp and kind of like a crimp and a connector block essentially was loose. It was like half inserted,
Oh, right.
and
Okay.
because of that, it essentially you could actually wiggle the cable and you could hear the relay go on and off. It was really funny, and it was just that, like a $1,500 amp, you know. The thing is that there's always a need for technicians, regardless if it's working on modern shit or old shit. One of the things with vintage is that it's getting resurgence from people who were around it when it was new. So people in their 50s and 60s are getting back into it. And that kind of is to do with why these operant receivers and such are going for really high money, even though they're not really worth it. I mean, it really kind of goes with an age thing. The gear
Thing
that
you
younger
let go of that you have to come back to. Like Nick, he bought his speaker amplifiers 3 times. He's like, well, I always knew I was going to come back to it.
They want to get their original end game.
Yeah.
I could see myself building a vintage system later, but I don't think it would be for different reasons, right? Like I like the aesthetic, I like the period, I like the build quality. The sound is good, but honestly, for me, I don't think there are many items from the 1980s or 1990s or 1970s that are competitive against some of the higher end stuff in my experience. You know, maybe I'm wrong about particular products or whatever, and there's definitely value. I'm not denying that there's amazing value. Like my Sonic Frontiers DAC that I bought for like $750 beat out most modern DACs up until I started spending like crazy money. Like I had to spend a lot of money to beat that item. And even the preamp that I bought, the old Sonic Frontiers preamp, it's taken a lot of money and tinkering to find a piece of gear that made me sell the vintage stuff. But once you get to that point, I'm like, well, I don't know if vintage is super competitive against high-end audio these days.
Oh, for sure. Because the thing with like high end is that you cannot simply compare low mid-range audio gear from the 70s and 80s to what is high end now. There's no competition. As much as I'm for vintage gear, I'm not saying it's the best thing. It really isn't, because you have to service it. You have to upkeep it. In my opinion, it's really advisable that you get your amplifier checked out every 10 years, it's just to see if something's going haywire. Or just get it completely rebuilt just to be safe by tech. You know, with vintage gear, I actually run some 1990s Philips R2R DACs. I've got a DPA, I've got some Audio Alchemy gear, and I just bought actually a Sonic Frontiers solid state DAC. It's got burn brown in it, and it's actually broken. I'll hopefully try and fix it.
I believe in you.
Thank you for the encouragement. But
I
really
trans DAC?
Yes,
Out of
it is a
curiosity?
trans
Yeah.
DAC.
Nice.
I actually got it out of Japan, and it was, I feel bad for the guy, but he's like, oh yeah, it's 2,900 yen for the postage, which is like $40 NZD, and then he accidentally, that was shipping to Australia. He got Australia mixed up with New Zealand, and then he got sent back to him, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, the shipping's actually 80,000. I'm like, oh, that's like, no, 8,000. It was like almost $100 to ship a broken deck with not too much. I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
sure, but that's kind of funny, you know. So shipping gear in New
From
Zealand,
Australia.
unless it's like a valve or something small, it's either. I had a really annoying case recently that the couriers here are really, really rough. My old workmates used to joke that couriers have a game of trying to see how stuff they can make the package by throwing it. I shouldn't swear, sorry. And throwing it and just actually.
Have you seen Ace Ventura: Pet Detective?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's
90s
like
movie?
that, man.
Yeah.
They kick it from like Japan to New Zealand basically.
Yeah. Like I had a friend actually on the server, and he got a parcel that had holes in it. Literal holes. And the tape was all falling apart. You know,
Now-
like, you cannot be sure.
If you're not Bruno though, and you can't fix anything easily,
I
and you're
can't,
someone like
no.
me, you're someone like me who buys a Sonic Frontiers DAC and decides to have it fixed, so I have it shipped from the US to Canada, who then fix it, who then ship it to Australia, and then if there's any problems, it has to go back over to Canada unless I can find a tech in Australia. But like, I've had problems with my tube amp, which was custom built in California. The guy who fixes it the guy who built it will fix it for me basically for free for life. But it costs 1,000 Australian to send it there and back, right? So I have to have a problem that's worth at least 1,000 Australian dollars just to ship the power supply and the amp itself to America and back again. It's about 480 each way.
Oh
Australian
my
dollars.
God.
You want to know what it cost me to ship a phono cartridge to the States from New Zealand? At least $50 to $80.
Please.
If I were to get a phono cartridge, right?
Years. I'm sorry. Years ago, I was I toured 10 different countries in Europe with a bunch of Swedes, and the Swedes called me the crazy American, and now I understand completely. And they also called me the spoiled American, because back in, I guess that was '86. They loved America so much that, they thought literally the streets were paved with gold, and that we had the world by the tail, and we did until recently, but we won't get into that. And it's incredible that amplifier you have to ship to get fixed. I have a similar amp. I've sent each one of them back twice. Well, one each. It only cost me shipping. It was $75
US.
each way, yes. And the problem was the amps were fine. Here it was a close chord signal producer that was messing up my system. And of course, I thought I checked everything, but no.
It was this other component.
It was this, yes.
So it was cheaper for you to ship these monoblock amps and power supplies than it is for Bruno to ship a cartridge for a phono.
Yes, and that's.
Essentially.
I will stand by the moniker of spoiled crazy American, because after hearing some of the nightmare stories, and you guys are just a small portion of some of the stories I've heard. Yeah, we got it made in America for now, but God knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Like
it's
we
tough
said-
for everybody right now, I think.
Yeah, it's not going to get any easier. But anyway, Bruno, really nice to meet you. Great stories. I love them.
I love your talking voice.
Yes.
Thank you. It's probably because of my poor quality mic of my built-in HPZ book.
No, seriously, like you've got like this, like there's a silent background, and you've got this like, I'm going to tell you, in the 1970s, we had a new innovation in the world of cartridges.
Electricity.
Electricity. And I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, I got dessert. I'm like eating cheesecake. I'm like, this is like watching a movie. This is excellent. I'm having a great time.
Yeah. My smile hurts right now. This is such a great community. You guys are just awesome, and I just wanted to make sure I said that before we said our goodbyes and all.
Aw, we need that in the world right now. Yeah. If there's anything else we can give to each other for free, is kudos.
And love to keep this thing. Most important as well. So, what other topics did we have? We're not.
I was the last one, but did you guys want to? I don't know if you saw in the thread, but we did have a couple other topics. But I've really enjoyed all your contributions so far.
I think the last thing would be, if Bruno or Zach have any thoughts on the importance of, and I think Zach has talked about this before in a prior episode, but gear before the DAC in a digital chain, the importance of it, digital converters or servers, and what your experiences were with how that affected the sonic performance of your system? Like, have you ever put a piece in before your DAC and noticed, wow, this sounds way better, something like that?
Yeah. I think we did think. I think there was a topic of. I mean, sorry for being late, but I think there was a topic of GR research in the capacitors, resistors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
Now, just to be clear, I'm not someone for high-end cables, and such things of that nature. But at the same time, I don't believe in buying the cheapest as possible components. I think sticking with known manufacturers, if you buy a decent amplifier now, all of those brands will be Panasonic, Nichicon, Vishay, Dale resistors. All of that stuff is pretty well priced, and it works how it should. If you're scared about lifetime on, a friend asked me recently, should I leave my tube amp on 12 hours a day? And I'm like, not ideal, but you can. I mean, capacitors and most stuff is rated from anything from 2,000 to 5,000 hours, and if you use it that much, it really depends how long you have it. So, if you're concerned about lifetime of parts, you can look up the data sheet for them. And that's one thing with a lot of esoteric high-end audiophile parts. They don't have much information on the specs of them, which can be a pain. So I mean, with speaker crossovers, none of the parts on those will easily fail over time. And I mean, decent film caps and such, and decent resistors are so cheap it's trivial. So I mean, there's no excuse not to use good quality parts, in something.
Bruno, what do you think about what Danny's doing though in his videos? Like, is he doing good work and replacing these cheap parts and then measuring before, measuring after, that kind of thing? Do you like what he's doing?
I think it's cool. He's, regardless of what people think of him, from an engineering standpoint of his speaker crossover designs, they're pretty impressive, and he's been known to do some pretty good stuff. Yeah, like his crossover rebuilds and stuff have known to be quite good. I think if you ask Void, I know one of the best things he's heard was some of his Danny Ritchie's sub cabinets, which are apparently very impressive.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know much about GR audio, so I can't really bring much to the table, and I haven't been following his videos or anything. I can comment about what Smod was asking about with the DDC thing, and I think I already talked about it, but to summarize it very quickly would be to say that I think DDCs have an effect, so putting in something before your DAC. I think a lot of companies that are producing DDCs and streamers are purposely trying to color the sound to make their products kind of stand out or to sound different enough to warrant people to buy them. And I think that for most cases that running your PC is probably good enough. But I think if you really want to, go to the absolute nth degree of Nervosa, then I'm a huge supporter of people going the way of CD transports if they can. But streamers are a fairly new thing in audio, and I think a lot of them are just trying to make things sound different for the sake of creating a market for something that does it really need to exist, and is it actually better? And it's a bit of a grey area for me, but I think there's a space for it, but it's got years to develop.
When I first tried it. Oh, so go ahead. Sorry.
So sorry, I was just gonna say. So Zach, that means you're not following Jay's advice about buying the Tyco Audio Extreme server for $12,000.
I have looked at the Tyco.
I was just joking.
I have looked at the Tyco there, but it's because I'm looking at just exploring this space a bit more. I've had to listen to what's the other one? The Pink Fawn 2.16X. So I was looking at buying a streamer, but I'm having a change in my direction with life at the moment. So I might be taking on a new adventure, and I might be very poor for like a couple of years. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to buy a $10,000 streamer or if I'm going to go be poor, but I am interested in that space. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
Do your comments extend to Wave Dream Net as well? about the filter aspect and that kind of thing, or do you think that the net brings something to the table beyond just changing the sound?
I think knowing that I really like the Rockner's DAC sound, so we're talking about the Rockner Streamer, which built to pair with the Rockner DAC. I think, you know, when you have a marriage of components like that, it's often, especially when the designer is someone like Nikolai who knows what synergy is and can make products play nice together. I think the net would probably be a good choice for someone like me. But at the same time, you know, whether the new Pi 2 AES product is as good and far cheaper, you know, you'll have to decide for yourself type thing. So it's going to be. I would love to do that comparison. That's something I'd look forward to doing in the future one day to decide for myself. You know, where does diminishing returns start with something like streamers and DDCs?
Yeah, I like to think. Do DDCs is it just a measurement thing, or is it also a sound thing? I like to think it's also a sound. You know, it's like I think the Pi 2 AES Mercury is probably measures good, but is that everything? You know.
100%. That's the really core thing here is that, you know, how are these things? How are they even tuning it? You know, like it's really it's like it's like at that point, like what is causing these differences? Because you can go get something like a bunch of different DDCs, or optical Rendu, a shit eater, a bunch of products like that, and try them all. Try a Lynx AES, something from your motherboard. Try different ways to off ramp. And they all kind of sound a bit different, and you just got to ask yourself why. It doesn't really make much sense, you know.
Yeah.
And even when you ABX this stuff, you know.
I don't think some people are even aware that they can do things to tune them differently. It's just magic, for lack of a word.
that's what I look at it as. It's like
I don't know what it is, so it doesn't exist.
Oh well, it does exist, but I don't know what it is. So that's magic.
Right.
So that's what Gaz has nailed it. But like the power supply on these things, the way that, you know, that seems to make a difference, which really doesn't seem to make any sense to me either. But you know, hey,
yeah. Ev, I cut you off before. Do you remember what you were saying?
No idea.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Like I don't even remember you cutting me off. Look, I've slept 4 hours in the last 3 days, like total. I was really stressing about something. I'm giddy that I've completed my thing and I got some sleep today, but yeah, it's fine. I'm good.
All right, well, that was an awesome episode. We ran a little long, but it was just awesome, great information, and I hope you guys can all come back next episode. I appreciate it, and yeah, if there's no other final words, we'll kind of close it out.
Thanks, Mod.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us, man.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys. Thank you.
Good night. Good morning.
Enjoy your morning, people down under.
Tubes are warming up as we speak.